As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now.
The international community must stop entertaining the illusion that this government is a willing partner for peace. Far from it. Its actions on the ground are dismantling the very foundations on which peace could stand, and intentionally burying the very idea of a Palestinian state. It has shown how little it respects the sovereignty of other countries, as we have seen in flagrant violations in Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Tunisia, and most recently, Qatar. And its hostile rhetoric calling for the targeting of Al-Aqsa Mosque will incite a religious war that would reach far beyond the region and lead to an all-out clash that no nation would be able to escape. How long before we hold all nations to the same standards? How long before we recognize the Palestinians as people who aspire to the same things you and I do?
We, the United Kingdom, Denmark, France, Greece and Slovenia call for today's urgent meeting of the Security Council on the situation in Gaza. We condemn the government of Israel's decision to further expand its military operations in Gaza. This plan risks violating international humanitarian law. We call on Israel to urgently reverse this decision and not to implement it. And we reiterate that any attempts at annexation or of settlement extension violate international law. Expanding military operations will only endanger the lives of all civilians in Gaza, including the remaining hostages, and result in further unnecessary suffering. Just this week, the Security Council heard a harrowing testimony from Itai David, the brother of Eviatar David, who was cruelly taken hostage by Hamas on 7 October and has been held in atrocious conditions in Gaza for over 22 months. His briefing was a stark reminder that the suffering of the remaining hostages and their families must end. The Security Council has consistently called for the unconditional and immediate release of all the hostages. And we are clear that Hamas must disarm and play no future role, no future part in the governance of Gaza, where the Palestinian Authority must have a central role. But this decision by the Israeli government will do nothing to secure the return of the hostages and risk further endangering their lives. It will also worsen the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza and risks further death and mass displacement of Palestinian civilians. The IPC has warned that famine is unfolding in Gaza. Children are dying from starvation. Hunger is so severe that desperate civilians are taking the risk of getting killed at aid distribution sites in order to feed their families. This is a man-made crisis, and therefore urgent action is needed to halt starvation and to surge aid into Gaza. We have a clear message for Israel. Lift restrictions on aid delivery to allow the UN and established humanitarian partners to operate safely and at scale, in line with the principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence.
War crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and statehood.
Thank you. United Nations Watch.
Shukran, Sayyid Rais. I take the floor on behalf of the UN Watch. My name is Mus'ab Hassan Youssef. I grew up in Ramallah as a member of Hamas. I address the words to the Palestinian Authority, which claims to be the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. I ask, where does your legitimacy come from? The Palestinian people did not elect you, and they did not appoint you to represent them. You are self-appointed. Your accountability is not to your own people. This is evidenced by your own total violation for their human rights. In fact, the Palestinian individual and their human development is the least of your concerns. You kidnap Palestinian students from campus and torture them in your jails. You torture your political rivals. The suffering of the Palestinian people is the outcome of your selfish political interest. You are the greatest enemy of the Palestinian people. If Israel did not exist, you would have no one to blame. Take responsibility for the outcome of your own actions. You fan the flames of conflict to maintain your abusive power. Finally, you use this platform to mislead the international community, to mislead the Palestinian society, to believe that Israel is responsible for the problems you create. Thank you.
Mr. President, let me remind this Council that the International Court of Justice has demanded that Israel take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance. With these facts before you, I ask you as a Council to assess whether Israel is meeting its international legal obligations and whether we humanitarians can fulfill our mandate. Weeks ago, an Israeli minister called allowing aid into Gaza a disastrous decision, while another implied that starvation might be justified and moral until hostages are freed, and they must be freed. Intentionally using the starvation of civilians as a method of warfare would of course be a war crime. Most recently, Israel's defense minister talked openly about moving Palestinians into what he called a humanitarian city. We understand that the proposal is to forcibly displace Palestinians to a designated zone near Rafah. Now, I don't know how to describe this, but it is not humanitarian. We hold all parties to the standards of international law in this conflict. We don't have to choose, and in fact, we must not choose, between demanding the end to the starvation of civilians in Gaza and demanding the unconditional release of all the hostages. And we must reject anti-Semitism. We must fight it with every fiber of our DNA. But we must also hold Israel to the same principles and laws of all other states. All members of this council have been unequivocal. Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Fletcher for his briefing.